So hi everyone, I'm Henry, a French software engineer at Criteo. Criteo is an ad tech company specialized in the retargeting and online advertisement. Just for you to know, you will be able to access the whole PowerPoint on my GitHub after the talk. We won't talk about that today. We'll talk about something a little bit more important, accessibility, why we should bother about it, how we can create a more inclusive web, and we'll see that together during this tools in action. So first, accessibility for everyone. So why it's important not only for people with some disabilities, but in fact, it will have an impact for everyone on the web. Stark, what I call the Stark method, so 5 little tips that you can apply while building your website or your application to make it more inclusive, and how we can test your apps. So first, a quick reminder, what is accessibility, or a lie? So the goal of that is to enable everyone to use your website, even those with limitations, disabilities, or able bodies. Just for you to know, based on a 2018 estimate, 25% of the US citizens have a disability. So we are not just talking about few people in the back of the room, but really a huge majority of the people that can access your website. There is different types of accessibility needs. It can be motor disability, cognitive, visual, or auditory. All these needs are kind of solved by some tools that are now built in your laptop or on your smartphone. So it can be screen reader, screen magnifier, selection switches, head tracker, and with some closed caption for audio or voice recognition. You can just accept them directly through the accessibility shortcut. Here is just a screenshot of my MacBook. When we are building our website, as any kind of developer, we think that it's perfect, it's brilliant, but in fact, there is some huge blockers that can limit the usage of it. Trying to solve this issue can also solve issues for other people. So just for like young lady, trying to bring a suitcase up the stairs, just a ramp built for someone using a wheelchair will help her to bring it up. So when you are building something for some people with some disabilities, so for make it more accessible, in fact, you are helping also other people in some certain needs. Okay. If it doesn't, it's not enough for you. In fact, you don't have really the choice. Especially in the UK, there is the Equality Act in 2010. There is the guideline of WCAG and the accessibility statement. Okay. The accessibility statement, basically, it's some guidelines of the WCAG, but really it's a basic one. So like you can zoom on it, you can zoom your text, it's still accessible. So basic stuff. Okay, so the Stark method. Sorry for the biggest fan. We won't talk about Tony Stark or the Stark family, but we'll talk about semantic HTML, tab index, ARIA tags, role, and keyboard navigation. Which makes Stark, of course. Semantic HTML. Basically, using semantic HTML is just try to use the good HTML tags depending on your needs. So use button for actions, use A with an href, use an image with an alternative text. Don't fix headings with CSS. We all know that we are putting P with a height font size. It's not really nice. Try to use semantic HTML. We have plenty of built-in tools. So nav, header, main. Just recently, now we have a dialogue and modal component. So you don't need to work on them. It's really free accessibility because some basic actions are built in. So select can be selected with a spacebar, button can be clicked with enter, button can be tabbed, navbar can be accessed with arrow keys, and it's really important to use them because using a div everywhere with an action will be read as a group by a screen reader and not as a button. So a person using a screen reader won't be able to know that this particular item can be clicked on it. Basically, semantic HTML equals free accessibility. We like to not work that much as a developer, so try to use this one. Tab index. Tab index basically is just to set tabbing order. You can debug it thanks to Firefox. So I don't know if you can see it on the image, but you have some little numbers that pop up, and it will tell you in which order your website will be parsed with the tab. So which element will be accessed and in which order. Just a quick tip, please only use 0 and -1, nothing else. This is some guidelines that have been set. ARIA tags. Okay, just quick questions. How many ARIA tags do you know? So people that knows ARIA tags for more than 2, can you raise your hand? Okay, so basically you know ARIA label, and that's it. But in fact, there is plenty more. You can have ARIA checked, ARIA expanded, ARIA error message, ARIA hidden, ARIA progress bar, whatever you think about it, you have an ARIA tag for it. And it really helps the people to understand how your website is working, even though they can't read your text directly. So just try to use them as much as possible. It's not a hard rule, but always cool to have. So the rule. Rule basically will describe the role of an element in program. So you can kind of change this role and how it will be read by a screen reader of magnifier. We like ARIA tags, we have plenty of roles. Can be alert, button, checkbox, grid, progress bar. And they kind of override the basic role of an element. So a div overall banner will be read as a banner and not as a group. So it gives more explanation of what is its purpose. Just to be sure if you understand, this will be read as a button and not as a link. So it will have the appearance of a link, but will be read as a button by a screen reader. Keyboard navigation. Keyboard navigation, what I can say that if you apply all the few tips that I gave you just before, almost everything will be done by himself. So try just to go to your website thanks to tabs keys, arrows, spacebar, escape, to navigate and verify that every actionable item can be navigated to. Be sure that the focus stays visible, and test. So test with a keyboard and a screen reader to be sure that everything is working properly and there is not nonsense on your website. Okay, so the most important part, I think, because as a developer, we don't like to do it manually every time. We don't want to be on our website maybe 1 hour a day to just be sure that every button is actionable, every item is focusable. So there is some nice tools that I will show you that can do it by themselves for you. So there is, for me, 3 kinds of tests that can be easily implemented. Storybook, thanks to the UI and CLI, manual testing, and Cypress. So for whom doesn't know, basically, Storybook is an open source project that will allow you to test some component. You can go further, but you can at least test your component, be sure that everything is actionable, test with the property of your components. And Cypress, it's an end-to-end testing library, open source too, that will test the full flow of your website. So now let's get ready for a little live demo. So this is a real storybook. It's the one that I'm using in my company. And what is really nice, so as I can tell you, you can test everything, but you have some built-in accessibility tool. First, you can see the different visions that some user can have, and with no effort, you can just check if it's still readable or not. But thanks to some large community, you have a lot of add-ons that lets you to add some actions on it. like this one for accessibility. It will test for each element of your component is basic accessibility checks. So for a button, if there is a discernible text, if there is some ID attributes, if there is some ARIA tags, everything is done by this tool. Of course, this tool also runs in the CLI when you are running your test. You can also have this test in the CLI because you want to run it in your CI/CD pipeline most of the time. You don't want to check it manually, of course. It also pinpoints if you have some incomplete or some violation of rules. So in my case, there is an insufficient color contrast, but this is not really an issue for us developer. It's more like we have to beat the UX team, tell them that they need to change the color, but this is something else. I will just show you with some more complex elements, like the radio button, if I found it. As you can see, there is plenty more tests that just appeared with ARIA tags. You can have more info on the test, which ARIA attributes it means, and its courtesy. You can read more thanks to the more info. You just go to the DQ University where you can read a lot of stuff about accessibility and how you can solve your issues. The second element that I wanted to show you is the accessibility panel. So this is a GitHub portfolio, thanks to Git profile, so an open source project on GitHub that will create for you a GitHub portfolio based on your GitHub account. So thanks to this amazing open source project, we'll just test the accessibility on it to be sure that everything is working properly. So as you will do for basic web development, you will just check your element. And if you go in your dev tools, you will just see accessibility. And you can enable full page accessibility tree that will enable new features and new web development tools. This little button that will change totally your how you visualize your website. In fact, this is how a screen reader will read your website and will parse it. So you can directly check, for example, these sections, the image, if there is an alternative text. So, shit, we don't have one. The headings, the links, if the item is focusable or not, everything that a screen reader will parse and will understand for you. So this is a really nice tool to just check sometimes to be sure that there is not big issues that we can detect just by hand like that. So for example, for this alternate text. Even though I will just show you right after, with Cypress it can do it automatically, but it's good to be sure that everything is working properly by hand and to know this kind of tools. So the last element that I wanted to show you is Cypress. So for whom doesn't know, so as I said, it's for end-to-end testing. It's for JavaScript. I know that it's a Java conference, but it's web, so. Basically, I just set up a little test that will change the theme and then test the accessibility of it to be sure that everything is working properly. As you maybe noticed, basically it opened a new tab that will check the accessibility at the moment that you want. So in the code, you just say, check the accessibility at this stage of my test, and it will test it right at this moment with the change that you made before. This test is made thanks to a nice open source library, Cypress Audit / Palai, I think, something like that. And we'll pinpoint all the issues that we have in our web page. In that case, we are missing an alternate text for one occurrence. I don't know if you can see it. So this is the issue that we just detected before. That's nice. It also gives you more info thanks to the DQ University link, and will tell you how to fix your issue. Basically, you can just use an alternate text attribute or aria label or aria label by. Okay, so let's try to fix them. If I just replace the alt, reactivate it, let's see if now my tests are passing. If there is something else that I didn't understand, it's the only issue that there is. So it will rerun all my tests, reload my page, and then everything is working. So as you may notice, now there is no issue. If I'm going back to my website and going to the accessibility tree, now I have an altered text with my name. So the issue that we detected thanks to the accessibility tree is detected also in the CI, and no non-accessible code will be available in production, which is nice. I lost my PowerPoint. Great. So these three tools are really working together to make a better world, to make a more accessible world. But in fact, if you don't try to work on it step by step, and at least make your design system first accessible, none of your website will be accessible. It's like always try to create the most accessible part, the small pieces part accessible, then to build your website. Of course, if you are working on legacy code, it will be harder than just working on this from a scratch project, from a news project. But you can, just by rebuilding some stuff, trying at least make them accessible directly, and be sure that we can create a more inclusive world. Okay. So to conclude, if I want you to just remember one thing of this talk, just think about Stark. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Yeah.
Do you use any tools to test your code on the building process file, for example, XCLA or Xcore? No?
On my side, no, because it's really most of the time the accessibility issues are on the rendering time, not on the build time. So for web, it's easier to have them directly either on the CI like Cypress, that will run it in a browser, than on the build time, that it's harder to detect. But it could be a solution if, I don't know if there are some tools that exist for this kind of issue.
The X, what I mentioned, the Xcore, execute your code on the building time, on a Chromium or somewhere, configure, and it will be throw an error.
Okay.
Stop your building process if you are
Yeah.
using an automated building, releasing deployment system.
Yeah, it looks like a little bit what Cypress did in the CLI, which is running into Scrum. So yeah.
You get the exact errors. You can go there. You have possibility to auto fix, for example.
Yeah.
The releasing process.
This could be a good solution. Any other question? Okay. My talk was that perfect? Yeah.
Maybe another question, because we've been learning the stock model.
Yeah.
Are there any other models or any other aspects that we should be aware of concerning accessibility, especially maybe colors, contrast, font size?
Yeah.
Spacing,
So I talk about the Stark method because basically these 5 tips are really easy to implement and will solve like maybe 80 to 90% of the issues that you have on your website. But yes, if you just go to the WCAG website or the DQ University, you will see plenty more rules. So there is a color contrast rules that WCAG 2.0 latest guideline just pinpoint. There are new ways to compute the color contrast every day, mostly. This is a pleasure of this JavaScript world. But yeah, if you want to go further, you can go to the DQ University or just read the guidelines. But this is really a good start to at least solve most of the issues. Of course, it will not create the perfect website, but better than most of the other websites, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have any like accessibility checklists that you put into your like CI pipeline to like check things and get them back or something like that.
So the question is that do you have this test directly in the CI with a GitHub action or something like that? Yeah. So for Storybook and Cypress, both of them can be run directly in the CI thanks to some CLI command line. I don't have them as GitHub action because we are not using GitHub in my company. So I can't use them as GitHub actions. But since you can just run them directly as a CLI and throw some errors directly, you can just create your own GitHub action. For this kind of tools, Storybook and Cypress, the community is so huge. So of course there is some GitHub action already existing. It's not some little project, so you can be sure that you can find them on GitHub Workplace. Okay. Very good. Thank you.